What happens when a teacher decides to leave everything behind and answer the hardest questions his audience has ever asked? This is not a normal lecture. This is a final examination, a raw, unfiltered conversation about the collapse of empires, the future of money, the meaning of love, and why most people alive today are not prepared for what is coming. And the answers might change how you see everything. If this kind of deep, honest thinking is what you have been missing, do me a small favor right now. Hit that subscribe button, tap the like, and share this video with one person who needs to hear the truth. That one action helps more than you know. Now let us begin. There is something powerful about endings. They force honesty. When someone knows they are walking out the door for the last time, the mask comes off. The careful language disappears. What remains is truth. And that is exactly what happened in this final class. A professor who had spent 4 years in the same classroom, teaching subjects most institutions would never allow, subjects like game theory, geostrategy, secret history, and the great books, stood before his students and his global audience one last time to answer their deepest questions. But before a single question was addressed, gratitude came first. Gratitude to the students who showed up week after week, who asked the hard questions, who stayed curious when the material got uncomfortable. Gratitude to the school that gave freedom to teach without restriction. And gratitude to a community of supporters online whose generosity made it possible to keep the teaching free from ads, free from sponsors, free from compromise. That kind of independence is rare, and it only exists because real people chose to fund real education. Now, the classroom was about to become something else entirely. Not a lecture hall, but a mirror. Every question submitted by the audience reflected a fear, a hope, a desperate need to understand a world that feels like it is falling apart. And the professor was going to answer them all, holding nothing back. The first major question came from someone watching the geopolitical chessboard and feeling terrified. The concern was simple. If the United States needs other countries to keep buying its debt, if Israel is playing its own game, if Russia wants the dollar to collapse, and if China is calculating its own advantage, then what are ordinary people supposed to do? How do you buy food when your currency is worthless? What does survival even look like? The answer was not what most people expect. It was not about gold. It was not about bunkers. It was about something far older and far more powerful. Human creativity, human resilience, The argument was this. We have been conditioned to believe we are economic machines, that our value comes from what we earn, what we spend, what we own. But that is an illusion, a recent one. For most of human history, people survived and thrived, not because of money, but because of imagination, cooperation, and empathy. Picture this. Take 100 strangers from different countries, drop them on a deserted island, no shared language, no shared culture, no infrastructure. What happens? Do they destroy each other? No, history tells us the opposite. They find ways to communicate. They discover each other's strengths. One person builds shelter, another finds food. Someone else tells stories at night to keep spirits alive. A new language forms organically. A new society is born from nothing but human instinct and connection. That is who we really are. And that spark, that deep creative fire, has not been activated yet in most of us because the comfortable world we live in has not demanded it. But when it does, and it will, we will surprise ourselves. The next question pushed deeper. If the US dollar falls, who rises? What replaces it? The answer challenges a common assumption. The US dollar as the world's sole reserve currency is a historical accident. It has never happened before in human history, and it will probably never happen again. When the dollar eventually falls, and the professor believes it will, the world will not end, trade will not stop. Instead, a basket of currencies will likely emerge. Gold, the dollar in diminished form, the British pound, the Swiss franc, and others will share the role. It will be less convenient, but more stable, and this transition will not happen overnight. It will take years, maybe decades. But what about the Ponzi scheme nature of American debt? Can you escape a Ponzi scheme from the inside? The blunt answer is no. A Ponzi scheme only ends when it collapses. In this case, collapse means the US government defaults on its debt. The dollar becomes nearly worthless. It sounds catastrophic. But again, the message is resilience. Just because we cannot drive cars or buy things at a store does not mean we starve. We adapt. We always have. Now here is where the conversation took a fascinating turn. Someone asked about the founding of America, about Freemasons, about connections between secret societies and the Founding Fathers. Were figures like Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, and Abraham Lincoln actually agents of the British Empire? The answer was nuanced. No, they were not spies. But they existed in a world where elites from different nations constantly interacted. The world of power has always been small. People of talent and ambition naturally find each other, share ideas, and respect one another across borders. That does not mean conspiracy. It means curiosity. The real story, however, is about capital. After the Civil War, British wealth flooded into America. Trillions stolen from India and China through colonization and opium were invested in American industry. But Americans would not have tolerated obvious British ownership. So the money came through proxies, names we all know: Rockefeller, Carnegie, Vanderbilt, presented as self-made entrepreneurs, but actually vehicles for British capital to quietly take over American industry. This eventually led to the creation of the Federal Reserve and the Bretton Woods system after World War II. And many Americans today, particularly Trump supporters, believe the current political struggle is essentially a second 1776, a fight to free America from transnational capital. Whether you agree or disagree, millions of people feel this in their bones, and that feeling shapes the world. Now let us talk about something deeply personal. Someone asked the professor what he and his family are doing to prepare for the chaos ahead. The answer was disarmingly simple: love. Not bunkers, not Bitcoin, not gold. Love. The strategy is to pour as much love as possible into their children, to build them up emotionally so they have the inner strength to face whatever comes. Because a child who knows they are unconditionally loved can survive anything. A child locked in a bunker with $1 billion but no emotional foundation will crumble at the first sign of real hardship. If you are still with me right now, you are exactly the kind of person this channel exists for. Someone who thinks deeply, who refuses to accept easy answers, who wants to understand the world as it truly is. So if you have not already, please take a second to like this video. It tells the algorithm that this matters. And if you know someone, a friend, a family member, anyone searching for real understanding, share this with them. Let us build something meaningful together. Now let us continue. The conversation shifted to a question that haunts millions of young men. Is a military draft coming? The answer was yes, but not just in America, in Canada, Australia, Europe, across the developed world. And here is the part most people miss. A draft is not primarily about fighting a war. A draft is about reorganizing society. Think about the current state of young men in America. Many are gambling online, lost in cryptocurrency speculation, consuming endless entertainment, refusing to work because wages feel meaningless. They go to college and spend 4 years learning almost nothing useful. This is a social crisis. A draft solves this, not through combat, but through structure, discipline, and training. The military, for all its flaws, is one of the few institutions that actually teaches useful skills: engineering, medicine, logistics, leadership. And it does so because it has a genuine incentive to produce competent people. Unlike universities, which profit from keeping students enrolled regardless of outcomes, the military needs people who can actually do things. So the advice was stark: make yourself useful. Learn real skills, read books, work hard. Because when the draft comes, and it will, the people who are useful will be kept safe. The people who are not will be sent somewhere they do not want to go. It is harsh, it is uncomfortable, but it is the reality of the world that is forming right now. Then came a question about AI. Could artificial intelligence be designed not to control humanity, but to optimize for cooperation? To limit the power of those who lack empathy? To steer history toward healthy competition without destroying freedom? In theory, yes, the technology could do this. But the question that matters is not can it. The question is, who pays for it? Trillion-dollar data centers do not build themselves. The people who fund AI development are billionaires and governments. And their goal is not liberation. It is control. More wealth, more power, more surveillance. They are not going to build a system that makes government unnecessary. They are going to build a system that makes government inescapable. This connects to a deeper insight about technology and consciousness. There was a famous Canadian media theorist named Marshall McLuhan who said the medium is the message. The technology itself, regardless of content, shapes how we think and perceive reality. ChatGPT, in theory, should enhance imagination by handling grunt work. In practice, it makes people dependent. It replaces the struggle of thinking with the comfort of receiving answers. And that struggle, that friction, is exactly where creativity lives. What makes us truly intelligent is not access to information. It is our connection to something deeper. Call it intuition. Call it consciousness. Call it the monad, as the professor does. Every piece of technology, no matter how impressive, dampens that connection slightly. What strengthens it is the opposite of technology. Long walks, deep conversations, books, silence. The presence of people you love. The discussion turned to cycles. Someone asked whether civilization itself is inherently evil. The answer reframed the question entirely. History does not operate on good and evil. It operates on cycles, rise and fall, summer and winter, birth and death. The Roman Empire rose and fell. The British Empire rose and fell. The American Empire is following the same pattern. There is nothing moral about it. It is simply the rhythm of human existence. The arrogance, the hubris, is in believing you can stop the cycle, that you can freeze history in place, that your empire, your system, your currency will last forever. That belief, that desperate clinging, is what causes the most suffering. The American empire is not evil for declining. It is causing pain because it refuses to accept the decline. Every act of force, every attempt to control, every war launched to maintain dominance only accelerates the fall and deepens the suffering. Empires declining is like earthquakes. You cannot stop them, you can only prepare. Now we reach the part of this examination that felt most like a confession. Someone asked the professor about his own dark period, about the years in his late 20s when he was depressed, playing video games, feeling disconnected from everything. Was there a book or a moment that changed everything? The answer was honest. There was no single lightning bolt. There was suffering, and the suffering was necessary. Hitting rock bottom created the conditions for transformation. It forced a questioning of every assumption. The belief that the world was meritocratic, that talent plus hard work equals success, had to be dismantled. In its place, a more nuanced, more painful, but ultimately more powerful understanding of reality emerged. If there was one work that shaped this transformation more than any other, it was Dante's Divine Comedy, a journey through hell, through purgatory, and finally toward the divine. Not just a poem, but a map of the human soul's capacity for descent and ascent. And the message embedded in it is this: you cannot reach the light without first passing through the darkness. Do not fear failure. Embrace it. It is the doorway. Here is something I want you to carry with you after this video ends. Not as advice, but as a gift. If you're in that dark place right now, if life feels pointless, if you cannot see a way forward, know this: that darkness is not your enemy. It is the cocoon. And what emerges from it, if you let it, will be something you cannot currently imagine. Subscribe to this channel not because of algorithms or numbers, but because you deserve a space that takes your questions seriously. Like this video because it is a vote for depth in a world drowning in shallow noise. And share it because somewhere out there, someone is sitting in their own darkness and needs to know they are not alone. The final questions of the examination touched on purpose. Why are we here? Why were we born as ourselves and not someone else? The answer offered was both ancient and radical. Each soul arrives on earth with a purpose. That purpose is always about growth, about enlightenment, about experiencing something specific, being rich, being in love, overcoming a particular kind of suffering. You chose your purpose before you arrived, and then you were placed in the exact circumstances that would allow you to pursue it. But here is the cruel and beautiful paradox. The world, through its schools, its parents, its social systems, actively blocks you from knowing your purpose. And that obstruction is itself part of the purpose, because true fulfillment requires overcoming obstacles. The resistance is the curriculum. You may not remember your purpose intellectually, but you can feel it, that quiet pull toward something you cannot name, that restlessness when you are living someone else's life, that strange peace when you are doing the thing you were made for. Trust that feeling. It is the most reliable compass you will ever have. The professor's final words to his own children, spoken not as theory but as daily practice, were 3 simple statements. I will always love you no matter what. I believe in you no matter what. Believe in yourself no matter what. That is not sentimentality. That is strategy. Because a human being who is loved, who is believed in, and who believes in themselves can navigate any storm, any collapse, any new world that rises from the ashes of the old. And so the examination ended, not with grades or scores, but with something far more valuable. A reminder that the world runs in cycles, that empires rise and fall, that currencies come and go, that technology promises salvation and delivers dependence. But through all of it, through every collapse and every rebirth, the human spirit endures. Not because it is strong in the way we usually mean, but because it is creative, because it is resilient. Because at its core, it is connected to something that no algorithm, no government, no empire can ever touch. The classroom is empty now. The smartboard is dark, but the teaching continues. Not in a building, but in every mind that refuses to stop asking questions. That is the real final examination. And it never ends.